believe it or not, in the history of the NFL, there really has not been too many games that have fallen on the day of Christmas. But if we go all the way back to 1971, there was actually a playoff game played on Christmas Day, and it was epic. So on Christmas Day 1971, we have the Miami Dolphins facing off with the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round of the 1971 playoffs. Coming into this game, both teams seemed to be pretty evenly matched, and throughout the entire game, it pretty much was an even match between the two teams. This game featured a lot of legendary players and coaches between Don Shula and Hank Stram facing off, and we even had quarterbacks like the likes of Bob Greasy and Len Dawson, other well-known players and legendary players like Larry Zonka, Ed Podolak, Wendell Hayes, Elmo Wright, and I'm sure there's others that I'm forgetting. It was a back and forth game all day long, but the Chiefs either held the lead or had it tied throughout the entire game, and the Dolphins did not lead until the very end of the game. But them and the Chiefs went back and forth on either being tied or the Chiefs winning multiple different times throughout the entire game. But where this game gets really interesting is that Bob Greasy threw a 5-yard pass to Marv Fleming to tie up the game 24-24 in the fourth quarter, and that's where the score stood still for 2 more quarters. Yes, that is right, folks. This game went double overtime in the playoffs on Christmas. How cool is that? So this game went in sudden death overtime. So first overtime, no one scored. So it went to a second overtime, and that's where Jaro Yepremian hit a 37-yard field goal in double overtime to win it for the Dolphins. And I may be incorrect on this. I'm pretty sure this was the Dolphins' first playoff win ever in franchise history, so this was a pretty monumental moment for the Dolphins as a whole, because obviously this starts a huge run of very successful teams for the Dolphins, including a perfect season in their run through the 70s. But how about that? A playoff game on Christmas that goes double overtime, and it is just bonkers that a game like this even exists. I'm surprised this game isn't talked about more often. It's one of the longest games ever played, and it's one of the few games to ever go double overtime in NFL history, and it took place on Christmas. But just watching the highlights of it and seeing the box scores and stuff, it looks like a truly memorable game if you were around back in 1971 and you were able to watch it. So since we talked about how the game finished, I'm going to talk about some of the stats that we saw in this game. Bob Greasy had 20 completions on 35 attempts for 263 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 picks. Larry Zonka rushed 24 times for 86 yards and 1 touchdown. Jim Kick rushed 15 times for 56 yards and 1 touchdown. And Paul Warfield has 7 receptions for 140 yards and no touchdowns, but still pretty good fantasy day even in 1971. And for the Chiefs, Len Dawson threw the ball 26 times, but he had 18 completions for 246 yards, 1 touchdown and 2 picks. Ed Podolak had 17 rushes for 85 yards and a touchdown. And Ed Podolak had 8 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. So talk about a complete day from Podolak. Wendell Hayes had 22 rushes for 100 yards, but no touchdowns. Elmo Wright had 3 receptions for 104 yards. And even if you look at the team stats as a whole, Miami had 22 first downs, Kansas City had 23. They were pretty similar on rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, completions and touchdowns to interceptions. So for a 1971 NFL game, this really is pretty much a complete game. It truly is a bunch of legendary players, 2 legendary coaches, a double overtime game in the playoffs and on Christmas. It is truly a one of a kind because you're never going to have the playoffs again on Christmas. The NFL isn't played too often on Christmas. We're starting to see it more now, but still it is not a thing that we see every single year. So this game was truly one of a kind, and I'm really happy I was able to do a little bit of a deep dive and see how this game panned out, how it came to be, and that it was a Christmas game that went double overtime. And oh yeah, it was a playoff game on top of that. Just how cool is that, right? So with all that said, what are your thoughts on this game? Were you alive back in 1971? If you were, what are your memories of this game? If you weren't, what do you think about this game? Do you think it should be talked about more since it's one of the more epic playoff games, let alone it being on Christmas? It went double overtime. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.